call it a night. Your quiet corner of calm where you can find a moment of peace and relaxation.
Welcome to our channel. We're delighted to have you back for another soothing journey into relaxation and tranquility. Tonight we will explore the art of focus and the mysteries of ADHD. If you haven't already, please support us by subscribing to our channel and you don't miss any of our calming stories and enlightening discussions. Before we begin, let's take a moment to adjust the volume to a level that feels just right for you. Find a comfortable position, whether lying down, sitting back, or curling up in your favorite chair. Allow yourself to settle in, leaving behind the day's stress, as we prepare to dive into tonight's topic. In this session, we'll be discussing the intricacies of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, commonly known as ADHD. We'll explore what constitutes normal levels of focus, how anyone can enhance their ability to concentrate, and the surprising connection between relaxation and creativity. Whether or not you have ADHD, tonight's exploration will offer insights and tools to help you improve your focus, manage distractions, and harness your creative potential. But before we delve into the details, let's take a few minutes to prepare our minds and bodies with a short meditation. This will help you ease into the right frame of mind for our journey ahead. Close your eyes and take a deep, slow breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely. Hold the breath for a moment, then gently exhale through your mouth, letting go of any tension in your body. Feel your shoulders drop, your muscles soften, and your mind begin to quiet. As you continue to breathe slowly and deeply, imagine yourself in a peaceful place. Perhaps it's a serene forest where the leaves rustle gently in the breeze. Or maybe it's a quiet beach where the waves roll softly onto the shore. Wherever you are, let the sounds of nature soothe you and feel the ground beneath you offering support and stability. Now, bring your attention to the area around your eyes and forehead. Notice if there's any tension there. And with your next exhale, allow that tension to melt away. Feel your mind becoming clear and open. Take one last deep breath in, and as you exhale, bring your awareness back to the present moment. Tonight's discussion will provide valuable insights into ADHD, focusing, and creative thinking. We'll explore both traditional and emerging tools to enhance your concentration, from diet and supplements to brain-machine interfaces like transcranial magnetic stimulation. Remember, this is a space for learning and self-discovery, not self-diagnosis. Sweet dreams and enjoy the journey. Tonight, we explore the topic of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, with a focus on its broader implications for attention and concentration in all individuals, not just those diagnosed with the condition. It is important to understand that a proper diagnosis of ADHD should always be carried out by a qualified professional, such as a psychiatrist, physician, or well-trained clinical psychologist. ADHD is defined by specific criteria, and while many of us may experience symptoms that resemble ADHD, particularly in times of stress or high smartphone use, these experiences do not necessarily indicate a full-blown diagnosis. We will explore these nuances further. Attention and focus are not fixed traits. They can fluctuate based on various factors like sleep quality or life events. It's crucial to remember that, regardless of where we start, there are methods to enhance our attentional capacity. These methods can help us rewire our brain circuits to achieve better focus, and we will discuss these interventions in detail tonight. As we delve into ADHD, it's useful to know that this condition was once referred to as attention deficit disorder or ADD. The term first appeared in medical literature in 1904, though it's likely that the condition existed long before that. ADHD has a significant genetic component, meaning that if a close relative has ADHD, your likelihood of having it increases. For example, identical twins show a high concordance rate, with up to a 75% chance of both having ADHD if one does. This probability decreases slightly for fraternal twins and varies depending on the closeness of the familial relationship. However, having a relative with ADHD does not guarantee that you will develop the condition. Even if you do, there are strategies to manage symptoms like inattention and impulsivity effectively. It's also important to clarify that ADHD has no direct correlation with intelligence. Intelligence, whether measured by traditional IQ tests or other forms like emotional or spatial intelligence, is independent of ADHD. People with ADHD can have a wide range of intelligence levels. The renaming from ADD to ADHD occurred in the mid to late 1980s when the psychiatric and psychological communities recognized that hyperactivity and attention issues often coexisted in the same individuals. As we proceed, we'll explore tools and strategies that can help anyone, regardless of whether they have ADHD, improve their concentration and focus. Let's now turn our attention to these methods and the underlying science that supports them. Let's take a moment to explore the concept of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, and its evolution over time. In the mid-1980s, the term ADHD began to replace the earlier designation of ADD, or attention deficit disorder. This shift in terminology has contributed to more accurate diagnoses and a better understanding of the condition. Currently, it is estimated that approximately 1 in 10 children, possibly more, have ADHD. The estimates range from around 10% to as high as 12%. During childhood, may see a resolution of symptoms. However, the other half may continue to experience ADHD into adulthood. Recently, there has been an observed increase in ADHD diagnoses among adults. This has raised questions about whether these adults had undiagnosed ADHD during their childhood, or if ADHD is emerging in adulthood due to changes in how we interact with the world. The constant influx of information through smartphones, emails, texts, and social media, coupled with the demands of modern life, may be contributing to this rise in adult ADHD. To better understand ADHD, we should first define what we mean by attention. In scientific discussions, terms like attention, focus, and concentration are often used interchangeably, though they can have distinct meanings. For our purposes, attention, focus, and concentration will be considered essentially the same. Attention refers to our perception, or how we perceive the sensory world around us. Our nervous system is constantly sensing information from our environment, sound waves, visual stimuli, tactile sensations, but we only pay attention to a select portion of this sensory input. The sensations we focus on become our perceptions. For example, as you listen to this, you are perceiving my voice. You might not be consciously aware of other sensory inputs, such as the feeling of a breeze or the background noises around you, but your body is still sensing them. Attention, then, is about selecting specific sensory inputs to focus on, while impulse control involves filtering out or ignoring other sensory events in our environment. Understanding these concepts is key to comprehending how ADHD affects attention and impulse control, and it also provides insight into the broader mechanisms of how we all manage our attention in daily life. Let us explore some of the characteristics and behaviors often associated with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. One of the key features of ADHD is a difficulty with attention, coupled with high levels of impulsivity. Individuals with ADHD are often easily distractible, and this can manifest in surprising ways. Contrary to the common belief that people with ADHD cannot focus at all, they are indeed capable of intense concentration, especially on activities or subjects they find particularly engaging. This phenomenon, known as hyperfocus, reveals that while individuals with ADHD may struggle to engage their attention for tasks they are not interested in, they can achieve remarkable levels of focus on activities they are passionate about. This points to the complexity of ADHD, where the capacity for attention exists, but it is not consistently accessible, especially for tasks that are less stimulating or rewarding. Another aspect of ADHD is its impact on time perception. Individuals with ADHD often face challenges in estimating time accurately, which can lead to running late or procrastinating. Interestingly, when faced with a strict deadline or significant consequences for not completing a task, they can perceive time more effectively and focus more intensely. This suggests that the urgency of a situation can sometimes help to overcome the difficulties with time management that are commonly experienced by those with ADHD. In addition to these challenges, people with ADHD may also struggle with spatial organization. This is often observed in the way they organize their belongings, frequently using what is referred to as the pile system. This method involves grouping items into piles that make sense to the individual, though the system may not follow any conventional or logical order. While many people might occasionally use the pile system, especially in situations like unpacking after a move or organizing gifts, it is more commonly associated with ADHD when it becomes a habitual way of managing space and belongings. These characteristics, difficulty with attention, challenges with time perception, and unique organizational strategies, are important aspects of ADHD. Understanding these behaviors helps to provide a clearer picture of how ADHD affects daily life and why certain strategies might be more effective in managing its symptoms. As we continue, we will explore methods and techniques that can assist in improving attention, time management, and organization, offering practical solutions for those who face these challenges. One common behavior observed in individuals with ADHD is the use of what is known as the pile system for organizing their belongings. This system involves grouping items into piles in a way that may seem logical to the individual, but in practice, it often fails to serve their needs effectively. When items are organized in this manner, it can become difficult to locate specific things, and if something is moved, it can disrupt the entire system, leading to confusion and frustration. This behavior is an example of a phenotype, a term used to describe the expression of certain genetic or psychological traits. In addition to organizational challenges, people with ADHD often experience difficulties with working memory. Working memory is the ability to hold and manipulate information in the mind for short periods, allowing us to use it for immediate tasks. Contrary to what one might expect, individuals with ADHD do not necessarily have poor overall memory. They may remember past events or upcoming appointments quite well. However, the specific function of working memory is often impaired. A common example of working memory in action is when someone tells you their name and phone number, and you need to remember it long enough to enter it into your phone. Most people may find this task somewhat challenging, but manageable. They can mentally repeat the information until it is stored. For those with ADHD, however, even retaining small amounts of information, such as a short string of numbers, for a brief period can be difficult. This difficulty in holding on to short-term information is a hallmark of working memory challenges in ADHD. These organizational and memory-related issues are integral to understanding how ADHD affects daily life. They highlight the importance of tailored strategies and tools to help manage these symptoms, enabling individuals to better navigate their environments and tasks. As we continue, we will explore practical methods to address these challenges and improve day-to-day functioning. Deficits in working memory are also observed in individuals with frontotemporal dementia, damage to the frontal lobes, and age-related cognitive decline. This connection suggests that many of the treatments, supplements, and tools used to manage ADHD may overlap with those effective for age-related cognitive issues. We have outlined a range of characteristics commonly associated with ADHD. These include challenges with attention and focus, difficulties with impulse control, easy irritability, and a tendency to become distracted. Time perception may be impaired, leading to difficulties in managing schedules. Organizational methods, such as the piling system, often prove ineffective, and there is a general difficulty in staying engaged with mundane tasks. However, it is crucial to note that individuals with ADHD can achieve heightened levels of focus or hyperfocus when they are deeply interested in a particular activity. This broad understanding of ADHD can help us see that its symptoms can vary in severity and may not all be present in every individual. Some may experience intense symptoms, while others may have milder forms. It is also worth considering how these symptoms might resonate with experiences in those without ADHD. Attention and focus exist on a spectrum, and different individuals may find they have varying capacities to concentrate depending on the task at hand. Some people are naturally able to focus on any given task, while others must work to convince themselves of its importance or find internal motivation to engage. There are also those who can persevere through even the most uninteresting tasks, often praised for their discipline. However, this approach to attention may not always be ideal. There may be value in the ability to focus more intensely on things that are genuinely interesting or exciting. This leads us to explore why people with ADHD can focus so intensely on activities they find enjoyable or intriguing. Terms like enjoyment and curiosity describe our human experience of liking things and wanting to learn more about them. From a neurobiological perspective, these experiences are linked to the release of dopamine. Dopamine, a neuromodulator, plays a key role in enhancing focus by altering the activity of neural circuits in the brain, making certain circuits more active than others, thereby creating a heightened state of attention. Dopamine plays a significant role in shaping our perception and motivation. It contracts our visual field, focusing our attention on specific stimuli outside ourselves, what is known as exteroception. This process drives us to seek out and engage with things beyond the confines of our own bodies, whether those are physical objects or information in our environment. As a neuromodulator, dopamine is essential not only for motivation, but also for altering our sensory perception. Our brains constantly receive sensory input, but we can only perceive a portion of it because we are only paying attention to some of it. When dopamine is released, it activates certain areas of the brain, narrowing our visual and auditory focus. This creates a tunnel of attention where our focus on what we see and hear becomes more concentrated. In contrast, when dopamine levels are lower, our perception tends to be broader, allowing us to take in the entire scene and hear multiple sounds simultaneously. Understanding this, we begin to see how dopamine helps direct our attention to specific aspects of our environment. This applies to everyone, not just individuals with ADHD. By giving attention a neurochemical basis, dopamine, and associating it with specific neural circuits, we move beyond the abstract idea of attention and start to grasp its biological underpinnings. To explore this further, let's consider the neural circuits that dopamine tends to enhance. These circuits are essential for understanding how attention is directed and maintained, and they highlight the intricate relationship between our brain's chemistry and our ability to focus. To understand ADHD and its relationship to attention and dopamine, it's important to consider two main types of brain circuits: the default mode network and the task networks. The default mode network is a set of brain regions that becomes active when we are not focused on any particular task, when we are at rest or letting our minds wander. This network is active when we are not engaged in specific activities like driving, studying, or listening intently. The key regions involved in this network include the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, and the lateral parietal lobe. In a typical person, these areas are synchronized, functioning like a well-coordinated symphony. In contrast, task networks are involved in goal-oriented behavior. These networks activate when we are focused on achieving a specific objective, such as completing a task or suppressing impulses. The task networks engage different regions of the prefrontal cortex, particularly the medial prefrontal cortex, which helps to control impulses and maintain focus on tasks. Normally, the default mode network and task networks work in an anti-correlated manner. When one is active, the other is subdued, maintaining a balance that allows us to switch between rest and focused activity smoothly. However, in individuals with ADHD, this balance is disrupted. Instead of being anti-correlated, the default mode network and task networks tend to become more synchronized. This abnormal coordination can lead to difficulties in maintaining focus, as the brain's resting state interferes with task-oriented activities. This phenomenon can be likened to a musical trio where all the instruments, drums, guitar, and bass, are playing the same melody instead of each focusing on their specific roles. This coordination, while synchronized, creates a disjointed performance, which in the brain manifests as the challenges in attention and impulse control seen in ADHD. In the brains of individuals with ADHD, brain imaging studies have shown that treatment or natural improvement over time often leads to a normalization of the interaction between the default mode networks and task networks. Specifically, these networks, which are abnormally synchronized in ADHD, tend to become anti-correlated again, meaning they function in a more balanced and coordinated manner. This is the underlying neurobiology, but it's important to understand the role of dopamine in this process. Dopamine acts as a conductor in this context, directing which brain circuits should be active at any given time. It orchestrates the shift between the default mode network and the task networks, ensuring that they remain out of phase with each other or anti-correlated. This orchestration allows the brain to function efficiently, switching between rest and focused activity as needed. In ADHD, there seems to be a disruption in this dopamine-driven conduction. The question then arises, is there a deficiency in dopamine levels, or is dopamine simply not functioning correctly? In other words, is the conductor missing or ineffective, or is the conductor present but not skilled in leading the orchestra? Understanding this distinction helps us comprehend the underlying mechanisms of ADHD and how treatments can address these issues. By examining both current and past treatments for ADHD, as well as the patterns of recreational drug use sometimes observed in individuals with ADHD, we can gain valuable insights into how dopamine regulates these brain circuits. It is important to clarify that this is not an endorsement of recreational drug use, but rather an exploration of the ways in which dopamine influences attention and focus in both typical and ADHD-affected brains. To understand the dopamine system in individuals with ADHD, it's important to explore the findings of a significant study published in 2015 by Spencer and colleagues in the journal Biological Psychiatry. This study formalized the low dopamine hypothesis of ADHD, which had been considered for some time but was not fully articulated until then. The hypothesis suggests that dopamine levels in certain brain circuits are not at optimal levels in people with ADHD. When dopamine levels are too low, it can lead to excessive and unnecessary firing of neurons in the brain, particularly in circuits unrelated to the task at hand or the information one is trying to focus on. This lack of appropriate regulation disrupts the balance between the brain's default mode network and the task-related network, which ideally should be anti-correlated, meaning one is active while the other is less so. In ADHD, however, these networks may fire together, leading to difficulties in maintaining attention and focus. To illustrate this concept, think of a band where each musician plays their part in harmony, including the important pauses between notes. When dopamine levels are too low, it's as if some instruments start playing out of turn, disrupting the overall performance. This disruption in neural firing patterns is central to the low dopamine hypothesis of ADHD. Historically, individuals with ADHD have often sought out substances that increase dopamine levels. This behavior has been observed long before the low dopamine hypothesis was formally proposed. Many of these substances, such as coffee, nicotine, and more potent stimulants like cocaine or amphetamines, are known to increase dopamine levels in the brain, particularly in areas that regulate attention. These substances, while providing a temporary increase in dopamine, carry a high potential for abuse, especially in adults. Fortunately, young children typically do not have access to such stimulants, which underscores the need for safer, more controlled methods of addressing dopamine regulation in ADHD. So we will talk about the potential for abuse in a few minutes. But if you look at children, even very young children with ADHD, they show things like preference for sugary foods, which also act as dopamine-inducing stimulants. Now, of course, once they get access to soda pop and coffee and tea, they start to indulge in those more than other people. For a long time, it was thought that children with ADHD consumed too many sugary foods or drank too much soda, or adults with ADHD would take recreational drugs like methamphetamine or cocaine, or would drink coffee to excess or smoke cigarettes to excess because they had poor levels of attention, and because they couldn't make good decisions, they were too impulsive and so forth. And while that certainly could be the case, knowing what we now know about dopamine, and the fact that having enough dopamine is required in order to coordinate these neural circuits that allow for focus and quality decision-making, an equally valid idea is that these children and these adults are actually trying to self-medicate by pursuing these compounds, right? Things like cocaine lead to huge increases in dopamine. Well, what happens was when somebody with ADHD takes that drug, it turns out they actually obtain heightened levels of focus. Their ability to focus on things other than things they absolutely care intensely about goes up. Likewise, children who consume anything that increases their levels of dopamine. If those children have ADHD, they tend to be calmer, they tend to be able to focus more. Now, this is very different than children who do not have ADHD. When they consume too much sugar, they tend to become super hyperactive. When they consume any kind of stimulant, they tend to go wild and run around like crazy. Actually, I have an anecdote about this just to illustrate it. I have a friend. He has two children that are now in their teens and 20s, but when they were little, one time, I brought them some chocolate just as a gift. When I showed up at their house and within 30 minutes, the kids were running around like crazy. I mean, they were pretty high energy kids, but they were going bonkers, and that's actually when the mother, my friend at the time, unfortunately, still now looked at the chocolate, realized that it was chocolate with espresso beans in it. It was like dark chocolate with espresso beans, so I was really at fault there. You don't want to give kids dark chocolate with espresso beans, but what you're really seeing that hyperactivity that is dopamine, okay? It's the sugar combined with the caffeine in this case, combined with a few other compounds that exist in chocolate that really increase our levels of alertness and our tendency to want to move around a lot, okay? So dopamine and low levels of dopamine apparently are what's wrong in people with ADHD. That dopamine hypothesis is what led to the idea that treating people, children and adults included with dopaminergic compounds, would somehow increase their ability to focus. And if you look at the major drugs that were developed and now marketed by pharmaceutical companies for the treatment of ADHD, those drugs have names like Ritalin. Nowadays, it's typically things like Adderall, modafinil, and some of the other derivatives. They all serve to increase levels of dopamine, in particular dopamine in the networks that control task-directed behavior and that coordinate the default mode network and these task-related networks. So many of you have probably heard of Ritalin. When discussing the relationship between dopamine and ADHD, it's important to consider how individuals with ADHD, including very young children, may exhibit a preference for stimulants, such as sugary foods. These stimulants can act as dopamine inducers. As children with ADHD gain access to beverages like soda, coffee, and tea, they may indulge in these more frequently than others. For a long time, it was believed that children with ADHD consumed too much sugar, or that adults with ADHD turned to recreational drugs like methamphetamine or cocaine, or excessively consumed coffee and cigarettes due to poor attention levels and impulsivity. While this could be a factor, recent understanding of dopamine's role suggests another perspective. It is possible that these children and adults are attempting to self-medicate by seeking out substances that increase dopamine levels. For instance, cocaine leads to significant increases in dopamine, and when someone with ADHD uses such a substance, they may experience heightened focus. This increased ability to focus extends beyond their usual intense interests. Similarly, children with ADHD who consume dopamine-boosting substances often become calmer and more focused. This reaction is quite different from that of children without ADHD, who may become hyperactive when consuming sugar or other stimulants. The idea that low levels of dopamine are a central issue in ADHD has led to the development of treatments that increase dopamine in the brain. Medications such as Ritalin, Adderall, modafinil, and others have been formulated to target these dopamine levels, particularly in the neural circuits that manage task-directed behavior and coordinate between the default mode network and task-related networks. This approach to treatment reflects the understanding that boosting dopamine levels can help individuals with ADHD improve their focus and overall cognitive function. Ritalin, also known as methylphenidate, is a prescription stimulant used primarily for treating ADHD and narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a condition characterized by excessive daytime sleepiness and sudden sleep attacks, which can occur during times of emotional excitement or after engaging in activities that would normally increase alertness. Additionally, individuals with narcolepsy may experience cataplexy, where their muscles suddenly become weak or limp. In this context, a stimulant like Ritalin helps counteract excessive daytime sleepiness by enhancing alertness, focus, and motivation. Adderall is another medication used for treating ADHD and narcolepsy. Like Ritalin, it serves to increase dopamine levels in the brain, addressing the dopamine hypothesis associated with ADHD. Modafinil is also prescribed for ADHD and narcolepsy, reflecting a common theme in the use of stimulants to manage these conditions. Ritalin was among the first-generation medications prescribed for ADHD, targeting the low dopamine levels thought to be involved in the condition. Adderall has become more commonly prescribed due to differences in pharmacokinetics, which refers to the rate at which drugs enter and leave the system. Initially, Ritalin was available in various time-release formulas, while Adderall was first released in a short-acting form. This meant that Adderall had a brief effect in the bloodstream, allowing for more controlled dosing. Over time, Adderall XR and other extended-release formulations were introduced to provide longer-lasting effects. The pharmacokinetics of these medications can significantly influence their effectiveness and side effects. For example, a long-acting stimulant might lead to periods of excessive alertness, insufficient alertness, or anxiety depending on the time of day and individual response to the medication. Ritalin and Adderall are both stimulant medications that increase dopamine levels, but they have distinct chemical properties and release profiles. Ritalin, or methylphenidate, shares similarities with amphetamines, which are commonly referred to as speed in street drug terminology. Adderall, available under various names such as Adderall XR, Mideas, and others, has its own pharmacological profile, which affects its duration and intensity of action. Adderall is a pharmaceutical medication that combines amphetamine and dextroamphetamine. While these substances are chemically related to illegal stimulants such as cocaine and methamphetamine, it is important to recognize that the pharmaceutical versions are not identical to these street drugs. Despite their structural similarities, the effects of these medications are controlled and intended for therapeutic use. Adderall, along with similar medications like Ritalin and modafinil, increases the levels of neurotransmitters such as dopamine and norepinephrine, also known as noradrenaline, and to a lesser extent, serotonin. Dopamine and norepinephrine play key roles in motivation, focus, and energy. The modest increase in serotonin contributes to a sense of calm and relaxation, which can balance the stimulating effects of dopamine and norepinephrine. These stimulants are prescribed to treat ADHD, aiming to address symptoms such as inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. When used under medical supervision and at appropriate dosages, they can provide significant relief for many individuals with ADHD. It is crucial that these medications are prescribed and monitored by a qualified healthcare professional, such as a board-certified psychiatrist or neurologist. It is also worth noting that some individuals without a clinical diagnosis of ADHD use these medications recreationally or as study aids. Adderall, in particular, is used by a notable percentage of college students and young adults to enhance focus and performance. While this practice is widespread, it is important to differentiate between medical use and non-medical use of these stimulants. Non-medical use can pose significant risks and is strongly discouraged due to the potential for abuse and adverse effects. Even in the absence of a formal ADHD diagnosis, A significant number of individuals acquire stimulant medications like Adderall through various channels, including the black market or by obtaining prescriptions from others. The focus here is not on judgment, but on understanding how these substances function in enhancing cognition and focus, as well as their potential for harm. Recent estimates suggest that up to 25% of young people use Adderall without a clinical ADHD diagnosis, a figure that has surpassed cannabis use within this age group. This indicates a substantial level of stimulant use among young adults and highlights a broader trend of stimulant consumption among adults seeking improved focus. The rise in non-prescription stimulant use may reflect increasing demands for focus and productivity in modern life. While this is an intriguing topic, our focus here is on self-medication practices aimed at enhancing cognitive function. Historically, substances like caffeine have been used to boost dopamine and norepinephrine levels, thereby increasing alertness and energy. Caffeine, which affects the cyclic AMP phosphodiesterase pathway, has long been recognized for its stimulating effects on the brain. In addition to caffeine, nicotine has also been used to enhance focus. Although smoking cigarettes has declined due to health concerns, vaping nicotine remains common. Nicotine, the active component in both cigarettes and most nicotine vapes, continues to be utilized for its cognitive enhancing effects. These self-medication practices, while common, underline the ongoing search for methods to improve focus and cognitive function, and they reflect broader trends in how individuals seek to manage their attention and productivity. The use of stimulants to enhance alertness is a long-standing practice, and it is particularly interesting in the context of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Stimulants are typically expected to increase hyperactivity, yet for individuals with ADHD, these substances often help with focus and calmness. The underlying reason for this counterintuitive effect lies in the plasticity of the developing brain. Children, whose brains are highly adaptable, can reconfigure themselves rapidly in response to experiences. When a child with ADHD takes a stimulant, it can help activate the brain's task-related networks at the appropriate times. This artificial induction of focus helps the child learn how to concentrate, even in the absence of intrinsic interest. The use of stimulants in ADHD can thus facilitate the development of focus by chemically inducing a state of attentiveness. This process is crucial during childhood, as learning to focus on tasks, even those that are not inherently engaging, is a significant aspect of developing into a functional adult. An example of artificial focus is found in techniques used by students, such as convincing oneself of the importance or interest in a subject to enhance concentration. This method relies on engaging specific neural circuits associated with motivation and dopamine. For individuals with ADHD, however, achieving this level of focus naturally can be challenging. They often struggle with remaining still, following instructions, and avoiding distractions, despite their best efforts. The issue of managing dopamine levels in individuals with ADHD, particularly through the use of stimulant medications such as amphetamines, raises several important questions. These medications, which include drugs like Adderall, essentially function as stimulants, and it is crucial to understand their potential long-term and short-term effects. To gain insight into these matters, a discussion with an experienced pediatric neurologist specializing in epilepsy and ADHD can be enlightening. This specialist has extensive knowledge in treating ADHD across a wide age range, from 3 to 21 years old, and has personal experience considering whether to prescribe stimulant medication to their own child showing signs of ADHD. The initial reaction to prescribing amphetamines to young children may seem surprising, but it is important to note that when administered at the lowest effective dose and adjusted as the child grows and develops, many children with ADHD have been observed to benefit from these treatments. It is essential to approach this treatment with careful consideration and under the guidance of a qualified healthcare provider. It is always advisable to consult with a medical professional before making any decisions regarding the use of stimulant medications for ADHD. The health and well-being of the child should be the primary concern, and a doctor's expertise is vital in determining the appropriate course of action. The decision to prescribe stimulant medications for ADHD in children and the timing of such interventions is a complex topic. While the common discourse often centers around whether or not to medicate, less frequently discussed is the notion that medication might need to be adjusted throughout a person's development. An insightful perspective comes from a pediatric neurologist with extensive expertise in brain function and ADHD. This specialist is considering whether to prescribe such medication to their own child and highlights an important consideration: the impact of neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to adapt and change in response to experiences. During puberty, significant hormonal changes occur, notably increases in testosterone and estrogen, which affect both physical development and brain function. Puberty also activates frontotemporal task-related executive functioning, which involves the ability to focus, direct attention, and control impulses. These changes mark a transition from the more spontaneous behavior seen in younger children and animals to more controlled and focused behavior in older individuals. The argument for starting medication before puberty, as opposed to waiting until after, is based on the principle of neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is most pronounced during early childhood and diminishes as a person ages, tapering off significantly after around age 25. From ages 3 to 12 or 13, the brain's plasticity is exceptionally high, allowing for accelerated changes and adaptations. Clinical literature supports the idea that early treatment can be beneficial. By intervening during this critical period of heightened neuroplasticity, it is possible to enhance the development of frontal circuits and task-related networks, thereby helping children learn to focus and manage their attention effectively in various contexts. Addressing ADHD through dietary interventions is a topic of considerable interest. Many parents and individuals with ADHD explore various dietary approaches, such as elimination diets that exclude sugars, dairy, or gluten, hoping to alleviate symptoms. This raises the question: can diet significantly impact ADHD symptoms? To evaluate this, it's essential to understand the challenges in studying diet and ADHD. Children and adults with ADHD often gravitate toward sugary foods or other items that boost dopamine levels, which may be an attempt to self-medicate their focus and impulsivity issues. Consequently, studying diet's role in ADHD is complex due to this self-selected dietary behavior. A study designed to explore this issue involved 100 children, divided into two groups. One following an elimination diet where specific foods were removed, and the other following a control diet. This was a well-designed randomized controlled trial, incorporating a crossover design where participants served as their own control group at different stages of the study. This method is effective in reducing individual differences as a source of variation in results. The study revealed significant effects, as measured by statistical analyses and p-values, which indicate the probability that observed results are not due to chance. This approach helps to better understand how dietary changes might impact ADHD symptoms, offering insights into potential dietary strategies for managing the condition. In scientific studies, the likelihood that observed effects are due to chance is typically measured by p-values. A p-value of less than 0.05 is commonly used as a cutoff, indicating a less than 5% chance that the results are due to random variation. In the study examining the impact of diet on ADHD symptoms, all effects were found to have p-values less than 0.0001, suggesting a very low probability that the observed improvements were due to chance. The study reported significant improvements in focus, reduced impulsivity, and decreased movement in children following an elimination diet. This diet, known as an oligoandrogenic diet, involved removing foods to which the children had mild allergic reactions. The children were tested for antibodies to various foods, and the diet was designed to eliminate those to which they had reactions, but not those causing severe allergies. The findings indicated that removing these foods led to a marked improvement in ADHD symptoms. The study, published in a reputable journal such as The Lancet, initially generated considerable excitement due to the significant improvements observed without drug treatment. However, subsequent critiques raised concerns about the study's design and statistical analyses. Despite these criticisms, the study highlighted the potential impact of dietary changes on ADHD symptoms. In clinical practice, opinions on the effectiveness of dietary interventions vary. For example, a pediatric neurologist with extensive experience in treating ADHD reported that eliminating simple sugars from a child's diet often leads to significant improvements in symptoms. This observation, while not a formal peer-reviewed study, is supported by considerable clinical experience. Conversely, the effectiveness of more comprehensive elimination diets, such as oligoandrogenic diets, remains controversial. Although some believe in the benefits of avoiding foods to which one has mild allergic reactions, the overall scientific consensus is still debated. However, there's another camp that's starting to emerge in the peer-reviewed scientific literature, showing that when kids are not exposed to certain foods, in particular nuts and things of that sort, they develop allergies to those foods, and then when exposed to them later, they cause real problems. So there's a whole galaxy of discussion and controversy and outright fighting about allergies in kids and whether or not the oligoandrogenic diet is the appropriate one. However, out of the 4 neurologists and psychiatrists that I spoke to about ADHD in preparation for this, every single one said children with ADHD, as much as possible, should be encouraged to avoid high sugar and simple sugar foods of most kinds, and if they can find particular foods that exacerbate their symptoms, obviously eliminating those foods is beneficial, and the foods that exacerbate their symptoms change over time. So I don't like giving a complicated answer, but I also don't like giving an incomplete answer. What this tells me is that children, especially young children who have ADHD, should probably not eat much sugar, in particular simple sugars. In addition to that, exploring whether or not they have existing allergies to foods they already consume might be a good idea. At least that's what this paper, the Pelser et al. Lancet paper, seems to speak to, and I should mention that that paper was published in 2011. Since then, there have been many dozens of studies exploring the same thing, as well as meta-analysis of all those data, and it does appear that diet can have a highly significant role in eliminating, or at least reducing the symptoms of ADHD so much so that some of the children are able to not take medication at all, or eventually wean themselves off medication as young adults and as adults. One interesting question is whether or not adults should modify their diet in order to increase their levels of focus. If they're already having normal levels of focus, but we'd like more or would like to reduce existing adult ADHD. That's an interesting and even more controversial topic. It brings us right into the realm of what are called omega-3 fatty acids. I've talked many times on this podcast about the known benefits of omega-3 fatty acids in particular, getting a 1 gram 1,000 milligrams or more, even as much as 2,000 milligrams each day of the so-called EPA component of omega-3 fatty acids, known to have antidepressant effects, mood-elevating effects, known to have important effects protecting the cardiovascular system. In recent discussions within the scientific community, there is emerging evidence suggesting that avoiding certain foods, such as nuts, during early childhood may lead to the development of allergies to those foods. This phenomenon can cause significant problems if the child is later exposed to them. The debate over the efficacy of oligoantigenic diets, which involve eliminating specific foods to manage ADHD symptoms, remains contentious. However, a consensus among several neurologists and psychiatrists indicates that children with ADHD should avoid high sugar and simple sugar foods. Identifying and eliminating foods that exacerbate symptoms can be beneficial, though the specific foods may vary over time. The 2011 study by Pelser et al., published in The Lancet, demonstrated that dietary changes could have a significant impact on reducing ADHD symptoms, potentially allowing some children to forego medication or eventually reduce their dosage. Since this publication, numerous studies and meta-analyses have supported the role of diet in managing ADHD symptoms. For adults, the question arises whether modifying diet, particularly increasing omega-3 fatty acids, might enhance focus or reduce symptoms of adult ADHD. Omega-3 fatty acids, especially the EPA component, have been shown to have antidepressant and mood-elevating effects, as well as cardiovascular benefits. Daily intake of 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of EPA is recommended for these potential benefits. Omega-3 fatty acids, particularly those containing at least 1 gram of EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid, have been shown to provide numerous health benefits, including positive effects on mood and cognitive function. Typically, these are obtained through fish oil supplements, which are cost-effective. Alternatives include algae or krill oil, suitable for various dietary preferences such as veganism or vegetarianism. The impact of omega-3 fatty acids on focus and attention is supported by some studies, though the effects are generally modest. Evidence suggests that consuming a daily dose of 1,000 milligrams or more of EPA can help adults with ADHD manage symptoms more effectively, potentially reducing the need for medication or, in rare cases, eliminating it entirely. While omega-3 fatty acids do not cure ADHD, they play a supportive role by modulating the brain's dopamine systems, which are crucial for motivation and focus. Modulation refers to the adjustment of underlying biological processes, such as those influenced by dopamine. Good sleep is a key example of a modulating factor, affecting cognitive function and emotional regulation indirectly. Similarly, omega-3 fatty acids modulate attention and mood by enhancing dopamine availability and receptor binding. In contrast, diets or supplements that directly mediate biological processes would be more likely to cause direct changes in cognitive function. While omega-3 fatty acids contribute to this modulation, they are not a standalone solution for ADHD. Diets such as elimination diets or ketogenic diets might modulate attention processes but are not cure-alls. It is important to differentiate between modulation and mediation when considering treatment options. Medications like Ritalin or Adderall directly target and alter neurochemical processes related to attention and focus. They are not the only options available for managing ADHD, and behavioral strategies can also be highly effective. Understanding whether a treatment modulates or mediates cognitive processes is crucial in managing ADHD and other conditions effectively. There's a paper that was published in Frontiers in Psychiatry just last year, 2020. The title of the paper is Oligoandrogenic Diet Improves Children's ADHD Rating Scale Scores Reliably in Added Video Rating. The added video rating is just that they're using an additional measure of focus and attention. Again, that's Frontiers in Psychiatry, 2020. I'll put a link to it in the caption, and that's a more recent study for you to peruse. So we've talked about the neural circuits of focus and the chemistry of focus, but we haven't talked yet about what would make us better at focusing and what focusing better really is. So let's take a step back and think about how we focus and how to get better at focus, and I'm going to share with you a tool for which there are terrific research data that will allow you in a single session to enhance your ability to focus in theory forever. What am I about to read you is from an excellent book that I recommend. If any of you are interested in neuroscience and things like meditation and default mode networks and things of that sort, the book is called Alter Traits. Science reveals how meditation changes your mind, brain, and body, and no, I'm not going to try and convince you to meditate. I'm going to share with you a small passage in the book that relates some research data related to focus that are very important. If you want to meditate, that's your choice. That's a separate matter. This is a book by Daniel Goleman and Richard Davidson, and I should just mention that Goleman is a well-known author, has written books on emotional intelligence and so forth. Richard Davidson is also a PhD. He's a professor of psychology and psychiatry, and he's at a University of Wisconsin-Madison. He's done terrific work on brain states and modulation of brain states and so forth. What we're about to talk about is when attention works and when attention falters, and what we are specifically going to talk about are what are called attentional blinks, not actual eye blinks. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but we're going to talk about attentional blinks. I'm paraphrasing here because Goleman and Davidson wrote about this so beautifully. I'd rather paraphrase from them than try, and just make up a new way to say it that is less interesting or less good, but I want to credit them. Attentional blinks are really easy to understand. If you think about a Where's Waldo task, you know this task Where's Waldo where there are a bunch of people and objects and things in a picture, and somewhere in there is Waldo with the striped hat and the glasses and Go Skinny Dude. And you have to find Waldo, and so it's a visual search, and it's visual search for an object that has distinct features, but is embedded in this ocean of other things that could easily be confused as Waldo. So you tend to look, 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 and then you find Waldo. Kids can do this, they enjoy doing this. Adults may or may not enjoy it, but they can do it too. They find Waldo when you find Waldo, or when you search for a target in some other visual search task at that moment. Your nervous system celebrates a little bit, and it celebrates through the release of neurochemicals that make you feel good. You found it, and you pause. Now, the pause is interesting because when you pause, what we know from many experiments is that in that moment of pause and mild celebration, however, mild, you are not able to see another Waldo sitting right next to it. So what this means is in attending to something in searching and in identifying a visual target, your attention blinked, it shut off for a second, and there's a more formal and more laboratory type way that we look at this. A recent study published in Frontiers in Psychiatry in 2020, titled Oligoandrogenic Diet Improves Children's ADHD Rating Scale Scores Reliably in Added Video Rating, explores the impact of an oligoandrogenic diet on ADHD symptoms. This study incorporates an additional measure of focus and attention through video ratings. For those interested in further reading, a link to this study will be provided in the caption. Having discussed neural circuits and chemistry related to focus, it's also important to consider practical strategies to enhance focus and understand what improving focus truly entails. One notable tool with substantial research backing is presented in the book Alter Traits. Science reveals how meditation changes your mind, brain, and body by Daniel Goleman and Richard Davidson. This book offers insights into how meditation can affect brain function, although the focus here is on the concept of attentional blinks rather than on meditation itself. Attentional blinks refer to a temporary lapse in attention that occurs after a person successfully identifies a target in a visual search task. A common example is the "Where's Waldo" task, where individuals search for Waldo among many other objects. When the target is identified, the nervous system experiences a brief moment of celebration, marked by the release of neurochemicals that create a sense of accomplishment. During this pause, it is difficult to detect another target immediately, even if it is very close to the first one. This phenomenon of attentional blinks highlights the limitations of our attention system. Despite the sense of achievement following the identification of a target, our ability to maintain focus is temporarily compromised, making it challenging to notice subsequent targets immediately. This concept underscores the complexity of attention and the importance of understanding how and when attention falters. A common method for studying attentional blinks involves presenting individuals with a string of letters or numbers, instructing them to be on the lookout for specific targets, such as the letters R and Z. During this task, participants are asked to identify both letters as they appear in the sequence. The findings typically show that once a participant identifies the letter R, they often miss the letter Z, even though both letters appear in the string. This phenomenon illustrates that attentional blinks occur when focusing on one target temporarily impairs the ability to detect subsequent targets. This effect is not unique to visual searches like the "Where's Waldo" task, but also applies to more structured tasks involving strings of letters or numbers. In individuals with ADHD, attentional blinks tend to be more frequent compared to those without ADHD, affecting both children and adults. This suggests that people with ADHD may experience more frequent lapses in attention when shifting focus from one target to another. Contrary to the traditional view that individuals with ADHD struggle to focus, this data supports the hypothesis that they might instead experience difficulties due to over-focusing on specific elements, leading to the oversight of other important information. The concept of open monitoring is relevant here. Open monitoring, a technique often associated with practices like Vipassana meditation, involves maintaining a broad and receptive focus, rather than fixating intensely on particular details. This approach contrasts with over-focusing, which can result in missing out on other critical elements. Understanding attentional blinks and open monitoring provides insight into how focus and attention can be modulated. For individuals with ADHD or those seeking to improve their attentional capacities, developing skills that promote open monitoring could be beneficial in enhancing overall focus and reducing distractibility. The visual system operates through two distinct modes of processing: focused attention and panoramic vision. Focused attention, akin to looking through a soda straw, involves a narrow, concentrated view, such as when searching for a specific letter within a string of numbers. This mode is characterized by high levels of attention, but can lead to missing other details. In contrast, panoramic vision allows for a broader, more encompassing view. This mode involves dilating the gaze to take in a wide field of vision, including peripheral details that might otherwise be overlooked. Panoramic vision is mediated by a different set of neural circuits compared to focused attention. These circuits are not only capable of providing a wide-angle view, but also have a higher frame rate for processing temporal information, similar to how slow-motion video captures more frames per second. Panoramic vision facilitates a state known as open monitoring, where multiple targets within a visual field can be detected and recognized simultaneously. This skill can be developed through practice, regardless of whether an individual has ADHD. By consciously training oneself to use panoramic vision, one can improve the ability to identify various elements within a scene, such as spotting both the letter R and the letter Z in a string of numbers. Research has shown that brief, targeted practices can enhance attentional capacities. For example, a study demonstrated that engaging in a simple practice of mindfulness, where individuals sit quietly with their eyes closed and focus on their breathing and bodily sensations, can significantly reduce attentional blinks. This practice, often akin to meditation, involves directing attention to internal experiences and gently refocusing when the mind drifts. Remarkably, even a single 15-minute session of this mindfulness practice was found to reduce the frequency of attentional blinks and improve focus in a near-permanent way. This suggests that such practices can lead to lasting improvements in attentional control, potentially providing a valuable tool for enhancing focus and managing attentional challenges. The practice of reducing visual input and focusing on one's internal state, known as introspection, enhances attentional control by reducing the frequency of attentional blinks. These attentional blinks, or brief lapses in attention, are a common phenomenon where the detection of one target impairs the ability to detect subsequent targets. This is observed not only in children but also in adults, particularly as they age and experience a decline in working memory and attentional capacity. Recent studies have investigated whether brief mindfulness practices, such as 15 to 20 minutes of sitting quietly, focusing on breathing, and paying attention to internal sensations, can mitigate age-related cognitive decline. These practices have shown potential in reducing attentional blinks and improving focus. The data suggests that such mindfulness exercises can be beneficial regardless of age or cognitive status, offering a way to enhance attentional control and possibly counteract cognitive decline associated with aging. While not everyone may commit to regular meditation, the practice of spending approximately 17 minutes on mindful introspection can significantly improve attentional capacities. This practice involves sitting quietly, concentrating on internal states like breathing and bodily sensations, and has been shown to produce lasting effects from just one session. In addition to mindfulness practices, engaging in panoramic vision, where one consciously dilates their gaze to capture a wider field of view, can also enhance attentional abilities. Panoramic vision enables the detection of more information quickly and can be applied immediately with beneficial effects. The exact mechanisms by which these practices improve attentional control are not yet fully understood. It remains unclear whether these effects result from synchronizing or desynchronizing neural networks, such as the default mode network and task-related networks. Nonetheless, the significant and enduring improvements observed with minimal practice make these techniques valuable for enhancing focus and managing attentional challenges. Shifting focus, let us also consider the physical aspect of blinking. Blinks can be spontaneous and coordinated between both eyes or longer, as in the case of sleep. where a single prolonged blink occurs. During sleep, eyelids are closed, reducing sensory input and altering time perception. As you transition into sleep, your experience of time becomes variable. At times, it may feel as though events occur in slow motion, while at other times, they seem to pass rapidly. This variability is due to changes in the frame rate at which you process information during different stages of sleep. In waking states, time perception can also fluctuate. When highly alert or stressed, time may seem to drag due to heightened attention and increased frame rate of processing. Conversely, in a relaxed or sleepy state, time might appear to accelerate, with a slower pace of personal action. Although the objective passage of time remains constant, subjective perception of time can vary greatly depending on one's state of alertness or relaxation. Interestingly, time perception is also influenced by the frequency of blinking. Research in neuroscience has established a connection between blinking and the perception of time. Unlike unsupported claims linking blinking to sociopathy, the relationship between blinking and time perception is supported by empirical data. This suggests that the rate of blinking can impact how time is experienced, providing a nuanced understanding of temporal perception. Dopamine plays a crucial role in controlling attention, and it interacts with blinking to modulate time perception. The link between dopamine levels and blinking reveals how these factors together influence our sense of time. When dopamine levels increase, individuals tend to overestimate the duration of events, experiencing time in a more slow-motion mode. Conversely, lower dopamine levels lead to underestimation of time intervals. In individuals with ADHD, who often have lower dopamine levels, time management can be challenging. They may frequently run late or appear disorganized, not only in physical space but also in their temporal awareness. This aligns with their tendency to underestimate time intervals and experience difficulties with focus. This connection between dopamine, blinking, and attention suggests that training in visual focus and blinking can potentially improve attention. Research supports this notion. For instance, a study titled Improvement of Attention in Elementary School Students Through Fixation Focus Training Activity explored how visual focus training could enhance attention. The study found that focusing on a visual target, such as an object close to the eye, combined with controlled blinking, significantly improved the children's ability to focus on other types of information. In the study, children were instructed to focus on a near object, such as their hand, for a short period. They were allowed to blink, but the study also found that consciously minimizing blinking could further enhance attention. The training involved focusing on progressively distant points, starting with close objects and gradually moving to more distant ones. This exercise was brief, lasting only a few minutes each day. Additionally, the study incorporated physical movements before the visual focus tasks to help children expend excess energy and improve their ability to remain still during the training. This combination of physical activity and focused visual training contributed to enhanced attention and better management of time perception. It is well established that children require periods of physical activity, such as recess, to help them remain focused during more sedentary tasks. This need for movement is due to the development of neural circuits that control reflexive and rhythmic behaviors. Children, especially those under the age of 15 or 16, have less developed circuits for the suppression of these movements, which affect their ability to stay still and focus. In educational settings, this understanding has led to the incorporation of activities that allow children to expend physical energy before engaging in focus-intensive tasks. One example is the use of fidget toys in schools. These tools provide children with ADHD and other students a way to engage in repetitive, low-intensity physical activity that can help manage excess energy and improve concentration. For instance, some schools now provide students with simple tools like rubber bands attached to their desks. These rubber bands allow students to pull or snap them, offering a controlled outlet for their physical restlessness. This practice helps students channel their physical energy in a way that supports their ability to focus on academic tasks. This approach is not limited to children. It has also been found effective for adults. By incorporating physical activity or fidget tools, individuals can improve their ability to concentrate and manage attention. This practice highlights the connection between physical movement and cognitive focus, illustrating how integrating movement into daily routines can enhance overall attentional control. It is not natural for our limbs to remain completely still for extended periods. The extent to which one can maintain stillness often depends on factors such as caffeine intake, restfulness, and baseline autonomic arousal. While some individuals may manage to hold their hand perfectly still, others might experience noticeable tremors. This variation does not necessarily indicate calmness or anxiety, but is related to the level of premotor activity, the neural commands sent to initiate movement. This premotor activity, or reverberatory activity, is particularly prominent in individuals with ADHD. These individuals often experience a heightened need to move, making it challenging for them to remain still and focus their attention. For example, during activities requiring precision, such as surgery, one can manage hand tremors by engaging other parts of the body, such as tapping the foot or bouncing the knee. This redirection of neural activity can enhance stability and precision. Similarly, in public speaking or other high-stress situations, engaging in subtle physical movements, such as pacing, bouncing a knee, or gesticulating, can help maintain focus and calm. These actions do not remove energy from the body, but rather redistribute neural activity, reducing tension and aiding concentration. Moreover, the relationship between blinking and focus is influenced by various factors, including drug use. Medications such as Ritalin and Adderall, as well as recreational drugs and caffeine, tend to reduce blinking rates. In contrast, increased fatigue generally results in more frequent blinking. This modulation of blinking is not merely a cosmetic feature, but plays a crucial role in regulating sensory input and time perception. The extent of visual focus, whether through a narrow or wide field of view, is also affected by blinking and attention. The interaction between dopamine levels and blinking has been studied, revealing that increased dopamine can lead to reduced blinking and heightened focus. Conversely, reduced dopamine levels are associated with increased blinking and diminished attention. The concept of interoceptive awareness refers to an individual's ability to perceive their own internal states, such as heartbeat, breathing, and the contact of skin with surfaces. It was once hypothesized that individuals with ADHD might lack this awareness, leading to dysregulated behavior. The idea was that improving their ability to recognize internal states might enhance their functioning in the external world. Recent studies have explored this hypothesis, including a brief 17-minute interoceptive exercise shown to improve focus temporarily. However, it is unlikely that the observed improvements were solely due to enhanced interoceptive awareness. In fact, an increased focus on internal sensations could potentially distract from external tasks. A study titled Interoceptive Awareness and Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder investigated whether individuals with ADHD differ in interoceptive awareness compared to those without ADHD. The results indicated no significant difference. People with ADHD, whether children or adults, are just as aware of their internal states as others. A common measure of interoceptive awareness is the ability to count one's own heartbeat, which varies among individuals irrespective of their attentional capacity. Understanding that individuals with ADHD are aware of their internal states challenges the notion that they are oblivious to their feelings. Instead, the issue lies in their ability to manage attention and enter a cognitive state that allows them to access necessary external information. The difficulty lies not in awareness, but in regulating attention amidst the demands placed upon them. This distinction highlights the importance of focusing on how individuals with ADHD coordinate task-directed networks with the default mode network. This process involves neurochemicals such as dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and acetylcholine, which play crucial roles in cognitive focus and regulation. Now, let's shift our focus to the medications typically used to target neurotransmitter systems, specifically those prescribed for ADHD, and explore some emerging non-prescription approaches involving supplements. Several of these supplements have demonstrated promising efficacy in well-regarded peer-reviewed studies. Firstly, the classic prescription medications for ADHD include methylphenidate, commonly known as Ritalin, modafinil or armodafinil, and Adderall. These medications primarily work by increasing levels of dopamine and norepinephrine in the brain. They are generally administered orally in pill or capsule form, with dosages tailored to the severity of the condition and the age of the individual. The choice of medication and its dosage can be complex, often requiring personalized adjustment. Some individuals may even use combinations of medications, such as a long-acting form of Ritalin with smaller doses of Adderall, to optimize efficacy. For those interested in a comprehensive review of these medications and their effects, a notable resource is the review article by Esposito et al., published in Frontiers in Biosciences. This paper provides an extensive analysis of the literature on these drugs, comparing them with similar substances like MDMA, cocaine, and street amphetamines. It discusses their similarities in action, as well as the potential problems associated with long-term use. Although the article is detailed and lengthy, it serves as an excellent reference for those seeking in-depth information. The paper is available in the caption for further reading. In addition to these prescription drugs, there is growing interest in non-prescription supplements that may influence dopamine, acetylcholine, and serotonin levels. Emerging research highlights the potential of certain supplements to improve cognitive function and mood. These compounds are increasingly recognized for their efficacy, supported by high-quality peer-reviewed studies. The landscape of ADHD treatment includes both established prescription medications and newer, non-prescription supplements. Each approach offers different mechanisms and potential benefits, and ongoing research continues to enhance our understanding of their effects. There are 2 over-the-counter compounds actively explored for the treatment of ADHD and for enhancing focus: L-tyrosine and phenethylamine, PEA. L-tyrosine is an amino acid that serves as a precursor to the neurotransmitter dopamine. Given dopamine's critical role in attention and cognitive function, it is understandable why L-tyrosine is considered for improving focus. Research indicates that L-tyrosine can elevate dopamine levels, which may enhance focus. However, the dosing of L-tyrosine can be challenging to regulate. It ranges from 100 milligrams to 1,200 milligrams and inappropriate dosing can lead to excessive euphoria, jitteriness, or alertness that might actually hinder focus. Caution is advised, particularly for individuals with underlying psychiatric or mood disorders, as dysregulation of the dopamine system is central to conditions like depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. For more information on L-tyrosine, resources such as examine.com provide detailed literature on its effects and applications. Phenethylamine, PEA, is another compound of interest. PEA and related substances fall into the category of dopaminergic supplements designed to stimulate dopamine production. Like L-tyrosine, the efficacy and safety of these compounds require careful consideration of dosage to avoid potential adverse effects. Detailed reviews and studies on PEA can also be found on resources like examine.com. Racetams, including Nupept, represent another class of compounds gaining attention. Racetams, though less familiar to some, are becoming more popular and are available over the counter in the United States. They are known to affect the cholinergic system, which involves the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Nupept, for example, has shown potential in enhancing cognitive functions at doses of 10 milligrams twice daily. Studies have compared Nupept and other racetams in treating cognitive impairments resulting from vascular or traumatic brain injuries. These compounds may be beneficial for individuals who have experienced head trauma or conditions affecting cognitive focus. It is important to consult with a healthcare provider before using these supplements, especially for individuals with ADHD or those considering them for cognitive enhancement. The research on these compounds is evolving, and while they show promise, their use should be approached with care and informed by professional advice. If you're interested in atypical treatments for ADHD compounds or improved focus and related themes, and you like reading about this stuff, there's an excellent review article that I can refer you to its Buy on It All. and it was published in 2016, so it's a little bit behind the times, although it's surprisingly comprehensive given that, which lines up all the various drugs that I've discussed, racetams, and Adderall and Ritalin, and various forms of dopaminergic agents and cholinergic agents spells out whether or not they are sold over the counter by prescription, and really lines them up in all their effects, their drawbacks, etc. I'll refer you to that study. It's available in its full-length form online for free. Its hinted all the journal is Neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity 2016 should be very easy to find if you put those keywords in, and while it is a review, it is a very comprehensive review, and if you're really into this stuff, and you also want to learn a thing or two about how these things interact with neurofeedback, etc., there's some information in there as well. I know I've already covered a lot of information, but there is one more category of technology for the treatment of ADHD and for enhancement of focus in anyone that I would like to emphasize, and that's transcranial magnetic stimulation. Transcranial magnetic stimulation, also called TMS, is achieving increasing popularity nowadays for the treatment of all sorts of neurologic conditions and psychiatric conditions. It is a non-invasive tool. It involves taking a coil. It's a device with a coil that's placed over particular locations in the brain, and then sends magnetic stimulation into the brain, and it can actually pass through the skull without having to drill through the skull, and nowadays can be used to both lower the amount of activity or increase the amount of activity in specific brain areas. It's spatial. Precision is not remarkable. That doesn't mean it's not of use, but it is not a super fine green tool, okay? It's not a cannon, but it's also not a needle. It is somewhere in between. It can direct the activity of particular brain regions at particular depths, and as I mentioned, it can increase or decrease that activity. So for instance, I've had a TMS coil placed on my head, not for therapeutic purposes. Even it was, I wouldn't tell you, but rather just for, well, I'm a neuroscientist and I worked in a lab with one for entertainment, exploratory purposes. Please don't do this at home. It was placed over my motor cortex, which generates voluntary action, and it was a coil that at that time could only inhibit neurons. And so what I was doing is I was moving objects around on a table, just like I am now. It was actually a pencil, not a pen. And I was tapping the pencil, and then the TMS coil was turned on, and for the life of me, I could not move that pencil, okay? Because it was inhibiting my upper motor neurons in the portion of my cortex that controls voluntary activity. As soon as the coil was turned off, I could return to tapping the pencil again. Nowadays, it's possible to stimulate motor cortex or any area of the brain with some degree of precision that could create the impulse to move without actually making the decision to move. So you can literally engage certain neural circuits and therefore behaviors and certain thought and emotional patterns by way of transcranial magnetic stimulation. This has far-reaching and vast implications. As you can probably imagine in discussing ADHD with a colleague that uses TMS, what they are doing is they are taking the TMS coil to children and adults that have ADHD, and they're using it to stimulate the portions of the prefrontal cortex that we talked about earlier that engage task-directed focus states. So rather than using a drug that generally increases dopamine, and some of the other chemicals involved there, using directed TMS stimulation of the circuits, and fortunately, I was quite relieved to hear this. They are combining that with a focused learning task. So they're literally teaching the brain to learn in a non-invasive way, no drug at all, and right now there are experiments, clinical trials going on, comparing TMS of this sort to the drug treatments of the sort that we described earlier that engage these circuits through pharmacologic mechanisms. So very exciting times for TMS, very exciting times for pharmacology related to ADHD and for enhancing focus in general. And when I say very exciting times, I mean no drug is perfect, but the constellation of drugs that's out there is getting much larger. But because they tap into different aspects of their circuitry, I do think that we are well on our way to identifying the ideal combinations of drug treatments, technological treatments, and behavioral paradigms for increasing focus in both children and adults with ADHD. And as a final point, I also want to mention something about technologies that are making it harder for all of us to focus, regardless of whether or not we have pre-existing ADHD or not. You can probably guess where this is going. Everybody nowadays seems to have a smartphone. It is important to consider the impact of modern technology, such as smartphones, which can also affect focus and attention. The pervasive use of these devices contributes to the broader challenge of maintaining concentration in today's digital age.in contemporary society. The prevalence of smartphones is nearly universal, and their use is widespread among both adults and children. Smartphones capture our attention with their constant stream of information, ranging from social media updates to multimedia content. Despite being a single device, smartphones offer numerous attentional windows through which users interact with various forms of content. This constant switching between different contexts, such as various apps and feeds, may challenge the brain's ability to maintain focus. The rapid turnover of information within these devices can overwhelm the brain. Unlike the physical world, where the attentional window is limited to a particular scope of information at a time, smartphones present an extensive array of content within a confined visual space. This creates an environment where users are bombarded with visual stimuli, from images to videos, which can lead to decreased attentional capacity. Studies suggest that this constant engagement with rapidly changing content on smartphones can indeed lead to attention deficits. Research, such as a notable study conducted in 2014, explored the relationship between smartphone use and attentional difficulties in a sample of 7,102 adolescents. This study found that in order to avoid significant reductions in attentional capacity, adolescents should limit their smartphone use to less than 60 minutes per day. Exceeding this duration was AS. While this study focused on adolescents, it is reasonable to infer that similar principles may apply to adults. For adults, a rough estimate suggests that limiting smartphone use to around 2 hours per day might prevent more severe attentional deficits. Cal Newport, an advocate for focused work, emphasizes that frequent context switching, such as that facilitated by smartphones, can impair the brain's ability to perform deep, meaningful work. In his books, Deep Work and A World Without Email, Newport argues that minimizing distractions is crucial for maintaining cognitive focus and productivity. Ultimately, whether one has ADHD or not, moderating smartphone use can be a significant factor in maintaining and improving focus. Limiting smartphone engagement to 60 minutes per day for adolescents and up to 2 hours per day for adults can help preserve attentional capacity. Maintaining focus is crucial, as it plays a significant role in success across various aspects of life, including academic performance, professional achievements, and personal relationships. Proper rest and sleep are also essential for optimal cognitive function. In concluding our discussion on ADHD and focus, we have explored a wide range of topics. We started by examining the behavioral and psychological aspects of ADHD, delving into the underlying neural circuitry involved. We also reviewed the neurochemistry associated with ADHD and the various prescription medications used to address these neurochemical imbalances to enhance focus in both children and adults. Additionally, we covered over-the-counter compounds and the influence of specific diets and elimination diets on ADHD and focus. We discussed how these factors interact to influence outcomes. Emerging neurotechnologies were also highlighted, including the impact of smartphones on our ability to concentrate and their potential role in increasing the risk of developing ADHD across all ages. It is important to acknowledge the inherent contradiction in discussing ADHD and attention within a format that requires sustained focus, such as a lengthy podcast. For this reason, our episodes are time-stamped to allow for flexible listening. You can choose to listen to segments at your own pace, rather than all at once. If you have reached this point, I want to extend my gratitude. I hope that you have gained valuable insights into ADHD, its impact on focus, and practical strategies for improving your own attention and concentration. In today's discussion, we also covered a technique that involves just a single 17-minute session to potentially enhance focus indefinitely. If you found this podcast valuable, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Your support helps us continue creating content. In the comments section on YouTube, you can suggest future podcast guests and topics that you would like us to explore. Your feedback is appreciated.